Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited to share this episode with the one and only Jordan Harbinger with you guys. If you don't know him, Jordan is the host of the iTunes Global Top Show, The Jordan Harbinger Show, and one of the few podcasts that I actually listen to regularly. I mean, he's had everybody on. Russell Brand, former CIA directors, anyone that you can imagine, mob hitmen. It's awesome. And he is a host that I greatly admire for his interview chops and insane storytelling skills. He's traveled all over the world, shares his stories. He also has incredible A-list guests and some that you'll never even heard of that turn out to be some of the best shows. And we dig into his background, what and who inspires him, what it takes to be a great podcast host, his thoughts on Larry King, and we unpack some of my favorite shows of his and get some insight and behind the scenes. So come join us for a killer conversation with one of my podcast heroes, Jordan Harbinger. Let's do this.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Thrilled to have Jordan on the show. Let's get to it. Jordan Harbinger, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. So let's get right to it here. So way before the show that you have now, before The Art of Charm and the early stuff like the Pickup podcast, you were coaching people on networking and giving them dating advice in college. At what point did you decide that you were the man, that you were the guy that people should be listening to on this subject matter?
Sure. So
as the expert?
I first started teaching networking skills because I was working as a Wall Street attorney, and I met that partner that you mentioned in the introduction, and I was like, hey, how do I work from home? And he's like, don't worry about that. Just if you want to be a partner here, you got to bring in business. So I started to learn networking for bringing in business. Well, it was really interesting stuff because I started to go to these like Dale Carnegie classes and sales classes and things like that. But I realized that no one wearing a sweater vest teaching Tuesday nights at the YMCA knows anything about how to bring in a multi-million-dollar law deal from Goldman Sachs,
Probably not.
To my wallet. Like they're teaching you how to remember people's names and look them in the eye and have a firm handshake. And I was like, okay, this stuff has its place, but, please, like, give me a break. So I started to study this stuff on my own. And then my law school asked me to teach small little elective courses, not even courses, but like little workshops on networking, and nobody cared. And so I started to bring those workshops and teach them to teach them at bars, because even doing it in a hot room in the law school was kind of a drag, and there were like 4 or 5 people would show up. And as we went to the bars, my group was all women because they were the only people who thought networking was important. All the guys were like, I don't care, bro. I'm just going to be a wealthy banker. And I'm like, cool, call me in 10 years.
Just going to hand out business card and shake hands.
Yeah, right. It's like, look them in the eye and have a firm handshake. So these women were far more interested in networking because they realized they were joining kind of an old boys club of attorneys and financial people in New York. And they were like, I need to learn how to navigate this. And it was sort of the blind leading the blind, but I was teaching them everything I knew about psychology, persuasion, influence, which I'd really been studying at that point for like a year and change. So I had a good leg up.
You had a grasp on the knowledge.
Yeah, a decent grasp in any case. So I started teaching that, and then guys were like, hey, how come you have like 12 women showing up?
What's this dude with the gaggle of girls around him?
Yeah, because the women were like, this is really interesting, let me bring friends. And as I brought friends, my group got bigger, and we started analyzing body language and nonverbal communication for people who were like on dates and stuff, and they were like, this is so interesting. So since guys started asking about the group of women that I was with, I started teaching the guys what I was doing. And then they'd bring their friends, and I kept having to repeat myself over and over because we had new people showing up every day. So I started burning my talks to CDs, recording them and burning them to CDs.
I remember those.
Yeah, CDs, just generally.
It's a laser disc.
A small laser disc. And then guys would be like, I need 5 CDs because my roommate wants one, and my cousin should get one, and my brother needs one. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to get rich selling CDs, right? I'm not going to, or giving them away for free. I'm not going to get rich selling them for $25 each. Like, it's just not a good business model. So I've eventually figured out podcasting because a friend of mine told me about it. It was like brand new. It was like a year or two old or something like that.
What year are we talking about? Just for reference for everybody.
2006.
Right, and there was a handful of them, right? And we didn't know where to listen to them. We didn't know where to get them. You had to go to different websites, and it
you
wasn't
had to just have
anywhere
iTunes,
even remotely,
which was like only available. I think it just come out for Windows, like brand new. Could run it on a PC. And it was all text navigation. There wasn't like show art and fancy graphics. There was no feature banners, nothing. It was like a text gallery that you could navigate, and then we made a website.
Almost analog.
And yeah, it was all basically analog. And then, people would share via word of mouth. And so I started the show about dating because of that. Not because I was like, dating is a thing that I'm an expert in. It was like, no one cares about networking. Dating is something that I'm talking about in a way that no one else, literally, that I knew was talking about it, other than a few guys on the internet, which later got famous for like creating this whole scene of like pickup artisty stuff that was kind of douchey and gross.
And Tucker Max came on the scene. Tucker Max's book.
Tucker Max came on the scene, and like he there's kind of this movement of guys trying to figure this stuff out, and most of them were kind of gross. And so,
you had a competitive advantage.
We had a competitive advantage because our thing was, we're going to be the not gross guys who do this.
We're going to be the good guys.
Yeah, we're going to be the
guys you want
to
bring home to your mom,
yeah,
right?
We're going to be the white hat guys who are like not lying to women, not treating women like crap because we can trigger some insecurities. It was all about like making guys better, and which is shocking because now it's like, duh. But back in 2006, 2007, nobody was like, hey, if your dating isn't working out, maybe you're kind of a shy, insecure weirdo that does stupid crap that pisses people off. Just saying, we were
back
the
then
first
it was like
people.
You have the wrong pickup lines.
We were the first people to kind of like say like part of this is your responsibility, and by part of it I mean 99%. Right? It's not the women rejecting you because they're mean. You need to deserve what you want, and the way you do that is you work on yourself. And so like we had a lot of guys who didn't like us because they wanted to be like, women are just bad. Wah, here's my magic pickup artist lines. But as the whole scene started to get bigger, what we were teaching was really popular because other than like some pretty unhealthy guys, like any guy who was healthy who found the dating niche, the pickup artisty niche, was immediately like, ooh, cringe. But if they found us, they were like, it's not all gross. So we built a multi-million-dollar business off being like, hey, we're not all gross. That was like our competitive advantage, like you said, was just like, we're not disgusting and misogynist, and that worked for several years.
Right, and that's not the best outward-facing marketing tagline, but that was behind the scenes there. And what was that moment where you were like, hey, let's, this podcasting thing is real. It's a great medium. I kind of have a good feel for this. I'm going to go with it. So
the first few years, I just really enjoyed doing it, and then I moved to Wall Street to do the law thing permanently, made the move from Michigan to go do that, and I ended up with a guest spot on Sirius XM satellite radio, and then they were like, hey, you should have your own show about this. So then I started doing the show, and I was like, I really enjoy radio and podcasting. So I kept doing it, and as we built a multi-million-dollar business of coaching, which back then wasn't a thing. Now everybody's a friggin' coach. But back then, there weren't coaches for most things.
That's a podcast for another day, man. We could talk about that for days.
I call it the bullshit industrial complex, where there's like consultants for people who want to become coaches who sell programs on the internet about
it's courses on courses, right?
Yeah, courses on courses.
Shovels, exactly.
And so I started to just realize like, hey, if we're making literally millions of dollars in sales per year, and 100% of these leads are coming from the podcast, this is a really good business model somehow, somewhere, some way.
It's working.
And then fast forward 11 years later, when I split up with my business partners, I brought the audience with me, and I was like, I don't want to coach anymore. I don't want to sell products anymore because of what we just talked about, the bullshit industrial complex. So now the Jordan Harbinger show, I don't sell consulting. I don't sell courses about making passive income while you sleep using magic internet keywords. I don't do that.
The revenue is real sponsorship dollars from real core advertising.
Yeah. If you're listening to the former CIA director John Brennan on the Jordan Harbinger show, or Russell Brand or Matthew McConaughey, you're going to hear a freaking mattress ad, and I don't apologize for that because it means
this is business.
It means that I don't have to go, by the way, if you want to really make money and be a successful person, come to my Las Vegas workshop where I'll regurgitate platitudes that I read in a self-help book 7 years ago.
I'm going to 12x your career. I'm going to 12x your life here. We're done with that. So a question that I love to ask every podcaster, and especially podcasters at your level, who are your early influences as far as great hosts? really great personalities, great interviewers.
Great interviewers. Like Terry Gross is really good from Fresh Air. She's like an old school interviewer. Her thing is all, I don't need to have an opinion on anything. I'm impartial. And I'm like fuck that. Can I say that on your show?
Say whatever you want,
I'm like, fuck that, right? No, you should have an opinion. You should not be impartial. I was talking with Leah Remini. You know who that is from King of Queens / Scientology?
Yeah, I love that show.
Yeah.
Dude, I love that show, man.
That show it's a really good show, first of all.
She has a good face of Scientology. I mean, if they ever want to remarket that thing, I mean, Leah Remini's great.
I think
Side note on that.
the train has sailed, given that she left the church and now considers them like a mortal enemy and talks about them literally every chance that she
we're
gets.
past that one. Yeah.
So we were talking about that. We were talking about Scientology. What was my original point? It was not Scientology. I just can't remember what the hell we were talking about.
We're talking about podcast hosts that have inspired you for the way your style, your approach.
Yes. Oh, right. So we made a joke about being impartial, and she goes, "You better not be fucking impartial about Scientology's a dangerous cult." And I was like, that's a really good point. When you're talking to a journalist, they got to be impartial. Like, I understand why that is, but on the other hand, there are some things where you don't need to be impartial. And I realize, okay, I'm a journalist technically, but no, I am 100% editorial. Like, if you come on my show
100%.
and you're telling me something and I don't believe you, I'm going to say, I don't really believe that. You better show me some evidence, because I'm speaking for the listener. I don't have to sit there and be like, well, this is fair and that's fair. I can sort of choose when to do that.
It's your show.
So with Terry Gross, she says, I never interject my opinion. And I'm like, that's your style. It's not my style. But I like how she's really good at listening. She's really good at prep. She keeps conversations going. She knows a lot about about the guest. And then I take a little bit from Larry King, who is terrible at prepping and probably like the worst prepper in that he does none, and it's really obvious.
Jumps into it.
He is like,
what's your name?
What's your name? How did you feel when Seinfeld was canceled? It was the most popular show in television history. Do you even Google people before they come on there? Jerry Seinfeld said something like that. Do you even know who's in front of you before you start filming? Because it was like, how did you feel when
and
Seinfeld
Jerry could
got
say
canceled?
that.
Yeah, and it does. It's not a good look.
Jerry.
It wasn't a good look, Larry. Yeah. But what Larry King is good at is just coming in and using his own curiosity. He leans on it as a crutch and does no other prep, which is too bad. But I take that, and then I take the prep from Terry Gross and Charlie Rose, and then I mix those together, and I put in my own personality, and that's what I get. That's why I prep for like 10, 12 hours for a guest. But then when I am listening to them, I'm not just sitting there smiling and nodding as they spout bullshit. Like, I'm going to say,
no.
Hey, that doesn't sound true. Or I looked that up. Turns out you're wrong. Like they have to defend that. And that to me is what makes it interesting. I never tried to copy any one person's style, because I was kind of like, the people that are really good. First of all, most people who are interviewing on podcasts are not that good. I'm not saying there's no good interviewers. I'm just saying that like 1 in 1,000 or less, 1 in 10,000 is really good, and the rest are just kind of like, you're faking it. You're trying to be a life coach.
Exactly. It's a combination of having the passion, because any good host, right, you need to want to do this. And it's something I wanted to get to later. The amount of prep work that goes into a great show is, people only see the tip of the fucking iceberg. Mm-hmm. They don't see that at all. They don't see the passion. They don't see the drive. They don't see that energy. And the other piece, tell me, right, when you get off of these shows, you have some incredible guests on, some real highly intellectual guests, some folks that are sharing an insane, we'll get to the mob hitman in a little bit story, but are you mentally drained as like an athlete, a performer, when you come off the court, when you hang up the microphone, when you shut it off? Like, are you drained? How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm often too tired. Like, my wife will say, hey, why don't you record all those pickups and all those intros and outros when you're done with the show, since it's fresh on your mind? And I'm usually like, are you kidding me? I want to go out and like go upstairs and lay down, or I want to eat, or I want to go for a walk and listen to music. The last thing I want to do is be like, oh, good, that was a super, super exhausting 90 minutes. Where can I do more talking into the microphone while pretending to be energized? Like, I got to be fresh for that stuff. And I've learned it's very difficult for me to fake energy. And so I've sort of stopped trying, with very few exceptions. Like if I'm being interviewed on a British TV show and it's 5 o'clock in the morning, or radio show, it's 5 a.m. I will figure it out. Or if I'm doing something overseas and it's 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and that's the only time they had, because over there it's 11 in the morning, I'll fake it. But I don't want to do like entire interviews and commercials and appearances. I just cancel it if I'm not going to do well, because it's too hard.
Right. And your audience expects a certain level for you. Like, they want to come into every show and know that they're going to get the best Jordan out there.
Yeah.
Because audience follows the host as much as a guest,
Yeah.
if not more. And it goes back to having the personality and really just digging in and asking those hard-hitting questions. We'll get to that in a little bit, but there's something really interesting. In late 2019, you had best-selling author Rob Reed come on, and Sci-Fi Writer was talking about, these pandemics and these other crazy things that are happening. Fast forward 6 months later, we're here, right? Mm-hmm. We're here. We have this crazy pandemic, right? I mean, looking back on that, does it feel like he was projecting it? Do you question that at night sometimes? Like, holy shit, this guy was on. He was calling it. Fast forward, this freaking flu comes from China. We have no idea where it comes from.
Well, I mean, so Rob Reed on the Jordan Harbinger show, what he'd said was,
it was a biological attack, right?
We're going to be able to print DNA on a printing machine, and it'll be like a 3D printer where like nice high schools have one, every college has one, and that it's going to be dangerous because even though humans can't design viruses unless you have a PhD and you have a magical DNA printer that doesn't exist yet, we're going to eventually be able to do that, and then someone's going to find the design of a deadly bioweapon because it's going to get leaked, just because data always finds its way around. Or even just like the Spanish flu of 1918 is going to get leaked, right? It doesn't have to be like a bioweapon. And then
they have a little bit somewhere in a jar in a vault
for sure.
That might get loose.
And they're all gonna take the genome of all that so they can study it. They probably already have that stuff. It's just that you can't print it in high school. But eventually someone will print it. They'll think it's a hilarious joke if they give it to their friend, or it'll just fall in a jar and break, or it'll get released by a nefarious bad actor. It'll be like, I'm not making light of this, but like, you think school shooters are bad. Wait until somebody prints a horrifying biological disease and says, screw everybody in my school. I hate everyone. That's the kind of thing that can start a pandemic. So that was what Rob Reed said. Hey, look, this is literally right around the corner. And then in 2021, we ended up with COVID. It's not a 3D printed, or it's not something that got printed in a high school. Look, maybe for all I know, this was created in some lab. I don't think there's any evidence for that. I want to be very clear. People say that kind of thing.
You're good on the bat. Yeah. You're still going with someone ate a bat story.
I'm still going with
some variation of that. Like that's weird shit.
Either someone ate a bat, or it was an accidental. They were studying this and got released. I'm not full on. Somehow, some ways, there's a secret conspiracy where they spread it to the whole world to destroy the account. Like I'm like, it was either negligent or completely innocent, although stupid as hell because they should have seen it coming. But it was either negligent or grossly negligent and not like some sort of deliberate act. I think that's just too much. Anyway, that's conspiracy rabbit hole that I never want to go down and don't really believe in. But what Rob Reed was saying,
like the Bill Gates ones, right? The Bill Gates.
Bill Gates is going to microchip us. Listen, dipshits. All right, if you think Bill Gates is going to inject you with microchips, why are you posting about this from the phone? And why would he need to? You're carrying a tracking device in your hand at all times that you use to take pictures and videos of yourself. You bring it everywhere. It sleeps next to you. Why does he need that in your blood? He doesn't. He knows more about you because you're willingly giving it to Google and to Facebook. Come on, man. Like, he's going to microchip us. Also, the smallest microchips available right now are not something you can easily
not going through a needle.
No, they're not.
No, you'll feel it. It'll get jammed up in that needle. We're not going to go there.
Yeah, it's
glad to see we're on the same page with the conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
They're kind of fun to listen to. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
I enjoy them because and there is a little teeny. They all start with that little nugget. Like there has to be some little nugget of somewhat truth in that theory at some point. Maybe not in the right sequence. Maybe someone told it. Different.
I don't know. Like the dumbest shit I've heard lately is stuff like 5G towers cause COVID-19, and I'm like,
that's not true.
Wow, that's real dumb. Because all you have to do is go, like, even the first thing you think of to test that hypothesis fails immediately, which was, okay, let's look at where there are 5G towers, and then look at where there's COVID-19, and it's like South Korea has the most 5G towers in the world, and they have like no COVID-19 at all. So then I'm like, okay, so that fails.
It does not add up.
Like I can Google search destroy that argument, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing about Google, right? The facts are out there. So we're going to take a little time capsule moment here. Important to note that we are recording this show on January 20th, 2021, the date of Joe Biden's inauguration. 46th president. With all the craziness of turmoil in the world too, does it feel weird to be a podcaster who's really bringing to light some of these issues before they ever were in the minds of the average person? I mean, you're bringing on experts that predict things, that see trends, that notice things that are happening before anything else. Like, do you feel that you really do have a responsibility because your show is so big?
Yeah, I do. And it's interesting you should say that, because I was just thinking about this this week and a little bit this morning, is people will say something like, hey, are you going to talk about QAnon? And before I was like, no, I think that's going to be, and months ago I was like, nah, the phenomenon, it's a thing, but it's not really that mainstream. And then when the Capitol riots hit, I went, oh, okay, I do need to explain what this is, because I've been getting emails where they're like, hey, and we have Feedback Friday, which is like our advice shows. I've been getting emails from people that are like, hey, my mom or my grandma or whatever believes that what is this? And I go, that's QAnon. And they're like, oh, I Googled that. Wow, I never knew this existed. And I was like, okay. So, because at first I thought, I'm just looking at all this weird stuff all the times. So I thought, this is like 0.00001% of the population. It's just loud on Reddit where I'm at. And now I'm like, nope, there are enough of these brainwashed dipshits.
It's a sizable mass.
To cause real problems. So I am going to do a show about QAnon. And my friend who wrote a book called The Cult of Trump, who's obviously, he's not a Trump fan, obviously.
I was about to ask you who your guest is.
Stephen Hassan, who's going to do this. He's a cult expert who invented a lot of the bite model and things that experts use now to evaluate cults. At first, when he wrote that, I was like, this is hyperbolic, dude. You're going to take a lot of flack for the title. I don't really want to do a show about it because I'm more that's where I'm impartial. I don't do a lot of politics on the show. But now I'm like, wow, you really were right. There are people who literally believe things like Trump was ordained by God and he's not, and Biden's not really the president. Trump is a secret president. That's why he wasn't at the inauguration. I mean, just actual lunatic bullshit like that.
They believe it.
And so I go, okay, we need to address QAnon because it actually is the missing piece for a lot of people who don't know why their mom is acting weird, who don't understand why their parents are like saying the dumbest, most insane shit.
It's not just Fox
possible.
News. It's not just they watch Fox News 20 hours a day.
No, it's like actual cult. It's like an actual political cult that defies logic and is completely inane and ridiculous.
And has used modern digital and social media to really transmit their message very easily.
Exactly. And like, even again, looking back at like the 5G causes COVID thing, Q's predictions, Q, the person, the mysterious secret agent who's predicting all these things live. All you have to do is check and see out of the last 50, 10, whatever, however many predictions that it's made, that the cult has made, which have come true. And it's not even close. They'd have a better luck if they just flipped a coin. They're far worse than probability in terms of predicting anything. It's like Nostradamus, how people think like, oh, he was dead on. No, that guy was wrong so fucking much that it's not even remotely within the realm of sanity to say that guy was a prophet of any kind. I mean, he's completely...
I mean, he had a couple of big ones, though. He had a couple of big ones that made a name for himself.
I don't think so. No, I think he said a few things that, like, over X number of 100 years were going to happen, but, like, were not really that difficult to predict. Or he never said in any of his original work, and someone goes, Nostradamus predicted this. And then when you look it up, it's, like, not there at all. You know?
Well, they didn't have Google back then. And so I want to spend a few minutes here. And I, as I mentioned early on, I'm a tremendous fan of the show, so your style of interviewing and the way you approach your guests. The Russell Brand one stood out to me, a little bit behind the scenes here, right? He was rushing, he was doing a TV show appearance, and he seemed a little bit tired. And at first, in the beginning of the show, I felt like he wasn't fully engaged, but you did a great job and you pulled him in and you said something interesting. You said that he was tops on your dream guest list. Why Russell Brand?
Yeah, I don't remember why he was top on there at the time that I recorded it. I think just because he's like so zany, but also he's smart. I don't agree with like most of the stuff that he says now. It's a little bit too woo-woo, or, you know, crystal healer for me. But I don't think he's dumb at all. I think he's a smart guy. And he's like really opinionated. He's a great performer. So that comes across. So that was always sort of like at the top of the list for those reasons.
Is he still? Who is your number one guest right now that you would love to have on your show? I mean, it's an all-star list.
Yeah, it's hard to say because the problem with having a dream guest is you can get them on and then they're like not really wanting to have a conversation, or they're really, really dry, or Or they just
It's like
give
that
you
dream hot chick, and then you get her. I'm not even. Gonna
yeah,
go
you know
there,
where we all know where that was going. But it's like I would say something like, wouldn't it be cool to have Jim Carrey on? Right? He would be amazing. Or would he just be sitting there and be like, "Fuck this, I hate podcasts." We don't know.
He may just send it in. Yeah, he may phone it in. You don't
Right.
want that.
You don't want that. Like when you see him on Netflix or on YouTube and he's talking about all these deep things and he's thought about everything, I'm like, that is what the Jim Carrey that I want on the show. But you could easily get him and he could just be like, I've had a shitty week. What? I thought you were going to ask me about the mask. You know, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. You get that with guests sometimes, and you just go, "Well, that was disappointing." It's rare, but people get tired. You know, that's why I do like I'm careful to like schedule things in the morning their time, but not too early in the morning their time, because you don't want to get somebody at 6 p.m. when they're like, "Oh my God, I've done 80 of these." When we had Matthew McConaughey on. I got him, and he goes, "This is the first one of the day," and I go, "Oh, that's great." Meanwhile, I was like, "I know, we definitely made damn sure we waited months instead of doing it like people go, wow,
he's been on a tear, man. He's on everything.
People go, why did you release this in January? I thought you would have gotten him in October. No, because I wanted him to be better at being interviewed because he was okay in the first few. Now he's on fire. But I also wanted the early morning time slot, and they're like, he doesn't have anything available because he's got all these projects going. And I was like, when's the first available morning time slot? And they were like, January, whatever, or December. I think it was December 22nd or something like that. And I was like, fine. So I waited months because I don't need to be first. I want to be the best. And in order to be the best, the guest has to be at their best. And you can tell the ones he did at like 6 p.m. because he's like, hey guys, I
got this book.
And I've got this book. It's great. Let me tell you a couple stories. I wanted him to be like, the coffee's just kicking in. I've got all right,
let's do it, right?
All right. That's what I wanted. And he was all right. Like he was raring to go.
He gave it to you.
And at the end, he was like, this is a great way to start the day. And I was like, you know what you don't want to hear? This was an okay way to end the day, right? Because then he's just mailing it in, hoping that you are not a boring jerk. That's, you don't want that for your... I got hundreds of thousands of people listening to this. Imagine wasting that many people's time. That's criminal.
They know to bring their A game. And listen, you have a huge audience. Do you ever get starstruck? I mean, have you ever been just like, holy shit, I can't believe I'm talking to this person?
No,
here.
you know why? I don't give a shit about celebrities. I hope I'm allowed to talk like this on your show. I'm being like really candid, and I'm a little bit potty mouth compared to how I am on the show. I don't use profanity on the Jordan Harbinger show ever. Because there's a lot of kids.
Do you think that's a sponsorship thing?
No, it's because there's kids. No, it's because there's kids listening. Like I get letters.
You just don't want to check that little box that says it includes explicit lyrics. You never want to do that.
Explicit.
It's true. I mean,
yeah, because it gets blocked in like certain music stores and apps won't carry it.
Well, that's important. I mean, just to get technical with some podcasters out there, like that really does make a difference in your reach.
It can, does, yeah. Like if you look at your show in the Russian,
except for Howard Stern,
in the Russian iTunes or Apple Podcasts, if your show is marked explicit, it's not available for download. Because Russia doesn't like profanity. They don't mind assassinations and shit, but don't you dare swear.
So great segue here. Let's talk about Mob Hit, one of my favorite double episodes. Anthony S. Luciano Romaldi. Did I pronounce his name wrong? I definitely butchered his name. How do you say his last name? Right, whatever. Yeah. This dude told his story about killing when he gets into this Pope killing story, the assassin. Did you know that was coming? Was that in the research?
I did know that was coming. And I
still don't believe it. Do you believe it?
I don't necessarily know what I believe and don't believe. I did as much digging.
I lost my shit when I heard that, by the way. I literally had to rewind. I had to go back and listen to that part again. I'm like, did he really just go through this whole story about how they set up the poisoning and assassination of the Pope?
So the thing is, some of that stuff is for sure true. The dates line up. The people line up. Some of the people that I checked out through other sources know him. But can we prove that everything he said is correct? No. And also, if there was somebody who would be like, I know he didn't poison the Pope because I poisoned the Pope, we're not going to get that person, right? Because
we know how the mob works.
The mob is not going to sit there and go, oh, no, that was John Gotti's nephew, so-and-so. He lives in Hoboken. Like,
fact check. Sorry, I got to call you on this one, Jordan. That's not the guy. It's my cousin over there in Weehawken.
And there's been a couple of people who've emailed me, and they're like, you know what's weird? I worked on the such-and-such job with these guys, and I never met him. And I'm like, that is suspicious. But then I got emails from people that go, by the way, I remember him because my dad had a clothing store next to the bar where they all met, and I know all those guys really well, and I remember him. He wouldn't know who I was because I was only 15 at the time. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a pretty credible piece of evidence that he was there all the time, but that doesn't mean he's the guy who did this or pulled the trigger on that or did it. So some of his stories may well be true. Other parts of the story might be like he was there when this happened, but it wasn't him, or he heard about it and all those guys are dead now, so he's saying it's part of his history. We will never know.
It's great radio, man. Dude, but it's great radio. So there's a couple of shows that I recommend when people ask me which shows do I listen to, and I recommend your shows, a couple of these episodes. North Korea, man, I got so into it. And it's your story, which is different than you're talking with your buddy Gabe about the times that you went there. What's up with the bathrooms there? I have to ask you, man.
The bathrooms,
you really didn't get too big.
The bathrooms are the worst.
What's the deal with North Korean bathrooms? And I have a thing when I travel too. I have not traveled as extensively as you, but one of the things that I love to do in foreign countries is go to every bathroom that I can. I'm fascinated by it.
That is kind of cool. You go to Japan and there's a toilet that has like music on it and shit.
And no place like there's no toilet seat. There's a hole in the floor. You have handles. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
What's the technique?
I would never be able to use public bathroom handles. I'll tell you that.
Especially
so
not
North
now.
Korea has some of the bathrooms are fine. Some of the bathrooms are not. I think one of the stories I told on the podcast was one where I was particularly shocked because it wasn't like in a rural area. This was legit like a toilet in a museum or something. And I walk in and I'm like, I'm going to pee in the urinal. And I'm peeing. It was warm on this trip that I went. I went there 4 times. It was warm on this particular trip. So I was wearing shorts and flip-flops or something like that, I think. Or long pants and flip-flops.
Hawaiian t-shirt. Yeah, khakis.
And because why not stick out even more by wearing my Gary Busey uniform? So I'm peeing in a urinal and I feel some splashing on my foot and I figure it's the condensation dripping from the bottom of the urinal, because of the cold water and the heat outside. And then I realize that it's warm and I'm like, oh my God, is it leaking on my feet? And that's the point at which I realized that the urinal is not it's connected to the wall. It's mounted on the wall, but instead of the drain going down and into the wall, it just drips onto the floor. And then the floor has a drain in a low spot. So all the urinals, you pee in it, and then they just drip onto the floor right on your frickin' feet.
You might as well just piss on yourself.
You might as well just piss on yourself or piss into the drain. But they had just mounted these urinals, and they were like, hey, we don't have any plumbing that's in the wall, and we're not going to make any. So they just made them drip. And I talked to the guide, because the guide came in and took a piss next to me. And I go, really? Like, what's up with this? And he started laughing, and he goes, it's pretty normal here. And I remember thinking, like, he had this sort of look of embarrassment because he was like, yeah, this is a little gross. And I was like, this doesn't go into the wall and go outside. And he sort of started laughing and he was like, these are old bathrooms. And I'm like, maybe that's true, but I doubt they're so old that they didn't have plumbing because even the Romans had aqueducts and shit, man. Like, what are you talking about? These are old bathrooms. They're probably from 1965.
Yeah, and we digress on the North Korean conversation there, but some of the great stuff you talk about is really your perspective when you engage with the North Koreans. You're not going there to change their opinion.
No.
You're going there to listen and understand. And I think that was my big takeaway from listening to, aside from the fascinating behind the curtain, really your perspective and the duality of what these folks know and what they don't know and the perception and everything. But it's going there and having that attitude of not wanting to change your opinion. You're not going there to convert them. It's not going to happen.
You can't even, you shouldn't even try, because not only are you not going to succeed, but you're going to get reported to the police or something.
That's definitely a good idea. Do you have a favorite episode?
No, but I recently made a bunch of pages at jordanharbinger.com/start where you can go and look at some of my favorites in each category. So it's like sports, spies, psychology, neuroscience, storytelling.
Like Jordan's picks.
They're like my picks. They're actually my team's picks, but we made it at jordanharbinger.com/start because people will be like, oh, hey, I just heard about your show from a friend. Where should I start? I'm like, well, what do I know? There's 7,000 there's like literally like 1,200 episodes. Where do I go? And I'm like, I don't know. Then I have to ask them what they're interested in and then make a recommendation. So if you go to jordanharbinger.com/start, you can just pick a category where you're like, oh, I like science. Oh, I like true crime. Click on that. Then you'll find a list of picks. Then you can find those. And then you can either find those episodes in your podcast app or you can play them right off the website.
I love it, man. What's a great piece of advice you would give to someone starting out in podcasting?
You're probably never going to make any money, so don't even try. But you can do a podcast. Just don't be doing it to try to make money because it's like the worst way to make money that I've ever found.
Well, it's a very small percentage that make it.
Yeah.
I mean, would you recommend? I mean, is podcasting for everyone? Being a podcast?
No, and
some
that's
people
the
that
thing.
think
It's
go to the course thing, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but go to the course thing.
Yeah.
They're like, you got to start a podcast. It's how you drive business.
That's
I'm like,
bullshit.
some people just aren't meant to be a freaking host.
It's
They don't
more,
get it.
That's
They don't
more
have a
than
passion
true.
for
yeah,
it.
I mean, think about this. Should everyone have their own TV show? No. Should everyone have their own book? Does everyone need to write a book? No.
Well, now they do.
I mean, now they do, right? But no, not really. Like most books you read, you're like, this is bullshit. This is like a blog post fluffed out into 200 pages. It's terrible. It's all derivative. So like, no, most people should not have a podcast. Just like I shouldn't have my own stand-up comedy routine.
You think you could be a stand-up comedian?
I mean, maybe that's a bad example. I shouldn't have my own underwear line, right? Why would you have a podcast if you're not going to put time and energy into the craft of being a talk show host? Why? It's like, and should I be
What's
a
the
model?
point?
Should I have my own? I mean, and it's like, oh, it's part of like Instagram and Snapchat. It's like, I don't have Instagram because I don't like creating content for that. And I'm not going to put time and effort into it. Just like with YouTube.
And you're not a fitness model.
And I'm not a fitness model, and it doesn't make sense. Podcasting has been turned in by internet marketers, who are like the worst. It has been turned into another channel of OMG, you have to do this or your business is going to fail, blah, 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 thought leadership.
Bad advice.
They're doing that because they sell some crap that they want you to buy that's going to help you with your podcast. What they really want to do is make money off of you by being a person who can sell you shit. So they convince you that you need to do this.
Shovels.
I whenever people invite me to talk about podcasting, I ask if they want me to talk about why people should not start podcasts, and that's been a really popular talk. And I used to give an annual talk at a really big event called "Please, for the love of God, don't start another podcast." And the thing is,
There had to be an acronym for that.
oh God, that's a really good. I should come up with an acronym for that particular talk. But
It's don't. It should be don't. The acronym should be don't, and just figure it out.
Yeah.
Don't. Yeah.
Or like but a lot of people. Every time I give that talk, people come up to me and they're like, "I think you just saved me like 100 hours." And I'm like, "Yeah. Oh, why? What do you do?" And they're like, "I'm a financial planner." And people keep telling me I should have a podcast. And I'm like, "Why the f would you do that? Why?" Or they're like, "Yeah, I run an auto body shop and we have a website and an Instagram, and people are saying we need a podcast." And I'm like, "You absolutely do not need a podcast." You know, it makes sense that an auto body shop can have before and after pictures on their Instagram. That I understand. You sitting there talking about ways you remove dents from cars and painting things when you don't really want to be doing that, that is the biggest waste of time I could possibly think of in my entire life.
And it's not serving anybody good here.
No.
So let's bring it home. I mean, this show for me is a masterclass. I have the opportunity, just like you, to interview people where it's osmosis for me, and I'm learning so much. Quick tip for me, based on the last 36 minutes of how I could be a better podcast host.
Your intro was, you could tell you were reading it and you were going pretty fast and blowing through it. I would make a shorter intro only about the things you care about. And then because your whole job is not really to introduce me. It's just to get people interested in listening to this episode of the show. So nobody gives a crap that I like graduated from the University of Michigan with a law degree.
They can look you up.
They can look it up.
Yeah.
And even if they did care, it's not really why they're going to continue listening to the program. So just say, like when I introduce somebody like the chief of the former CIA director, John Brennan, who was on the show yesterday, I'm not going to say, he was the former CIA director under Barack Obama and was responsible for this and this and this, and then he did this, and then and the book is called this. I go, the former director of the CIA under Barack Obama, super fascinating guy. We talk about world events, why the Iran thing is a big problem, why the government is definitely spying on you, and a whole bunch of other stuff you're not going to want to miss. Done.
Yeah, and I think that's a takeaway I'm going to do because I've been listening to a lot of the shows there too. And you record those afterwards.
I do them
correct?
after,
You do them afterwards because it's a recap. And you're like, hey, this is going to be great. You're going to get right into it. I love it, man. I'm going to take that one. I might even re-record the intro here. I think I may actually re-record the intro here. So we're going to certainly do that. Jordan, what's the single greatest piece of advice that you ever received that you take action on every single day of your life?
Ooh. Good question. Probably, I don't even know if this was advice or if I just thought of it. I'm going to say it was advice because it probably was. Use a calendar religiously. So if something is on my calendar, it every single time gets done. barring, like I had some other thing come up that I had to put in there. If it's not on the calendar, it doesn't get done. So if someone's like, hey, can you talk right now? I'm like, no. Because right now it says walk. Or right now it says play with your kid. Or right now it says, go on the podcast. Or right now it says read. And like my wife, she's good about this now because half of her job is to protect my time. But when I worked with a larger team,
she's good.
There would be people that would say things like, why? I mean, no offense, you're just sitting there. And I'm like, well, I'm reading. And they're like, so you have time? And I'm like, no, I don't.
I'm reading.
And they're like, God damn it. Because they wanted to like have a meeting and I go, no. And my business partners, they used to get really mad at me because they'd be like, you're not even doing anything. And I'm like, the reason that the show is good is because I do all of these things and I don't just get distracted by your whim because you want to go to In-N-Out Burger and you wanted to turn it into a meeting. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. And that has been magical for my productivity because I get up, I spend zero cognitive bandwidth thinking what I should do next because everything's on the calendar already. And if somebody wants me to do something, I have to find a place for it in the calendar. So if someone says, hey, I got this thing, it's going to take 2 hours, I don't just go, yeah, sure, let's do it tomorrow. And then I have like 17 2-hour things to do tomorrow. If it doesn't fit in the calendar, it's not happening on that day. So when someone says this is going to take 2 hours, I go, great, July. And they're like, wow, that's really far out there. And I go, yeah, that's what I get. That's when I have 2 hours to spend with a stranger, like that's...
It's being a student of your calendar and being disciplined to it, and I love it, man. And last but not least, I have this question. I ask the same question on every show because I love the perspective on it, and it comes down to this. Everybody's had a journey in their life and their career, and there's been those times when you're down, when you're at the lowest, and you got to pull yourself up. And the word that resonates to me and the word that really is the foundation of the show is tenacity. And you look back on your life and those moments you had to pull yourself up and harness that tenacity. And those other times when you're sitting on top of the world and you're looking at this awesome show you have, your wife, your life, everything that's good, and you want to show gratitude, what keeps you in focus? Jordan Harbinger, what is your North Star?
I'm always trying to figure out what's best for my listening audience because that means people are going to keep listening. That means people are going to share. That means people are going to support the sponsors. So I just focus on that, which actually keeps things really easy because I know a lot of creators are like, ooh, this deal's going to pay me a lot of money and all I have to do is recommend a cryptocurrency scam, or... oh, this is going to be really fun. It's an event where blah, 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 something, Instagram, TikTok. And I'm like, no, thanks. My audience doesn't care. I just stay focused on what's going to be good for the audience. It makes me turn down money that later turns into more money because I'm not shilling freaking hair loss products or something, or like dick pills, to put it bluntly. And it makes me get up and prepare. It makes me not mail it in. It makes me like, that's what's really the best. And I look at that like, am I creating something that's worth me listening to and spending my time? And if the answer is no, I'm like, hey, we got to delete this episode because this sucked. Or, hey, would I use this product that I'm being asked to endorse? And if the answer is no or probably not, I'm like, I don't care how much money it is because people are going to know that I don't recommend some bullshit vitamin that's for your brain that doesn't do anything. Like people will see through that. And it's that whole thing, like your reputation takes a lifetime to build and 1 second to destroy. And so I just think 100%. About that when I see a fat check dangled in front of my nose. I'm like, I'm going to say no to this one so I can say yes to the next 100 of these, in the next
I love it, man.
decades to come.
Dude, I love it, man. Jordan, thank you for spending time with us this afternoon. Thank you for your sound advice. Thank you for inspiring me to be a great host. And I appreciate you and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, you got it, man. Thank you.
Awesome, man. And everyone out there, thank you for listening. And please go to jordanharbinger.com. Dude, I love this guy. Just dig in. Check out the North Korea episodes. You'll see what it's all about. Check out his 6-minute networking course. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Just check it out there, too. And I guess you want people to connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, go for it,
cool,
man. I'm at Jordan Harbinger everywhere. And LinkedIn, yeah, people can add me there. But I just want people to listen to the podcast, That's the main thing.
It's just good stuff. It's just great, man. And I really appreciate it. This has been a good one for me. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on the podcast. You know where to find us, thepodcast.com. Remember, if you like this episode, share it, subscribe, spread the word. Remember, take care of each other, stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.